Saib,
Yes.
can you remind me to tell everybody that I have a special announcement at the end of the show?
Okie dokie.
Okay, hey, guys. No, don't you? I know you're about to move that cursor over to the end of the video. Don't just skip. We have a lot of good stuff to talk about from beginning to end. Okay, let's just keep it a surprise. All right. But yeah, I got a special announcement. Some people are kind of already aware of it, but welcome back to Maximum News, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host as always, Max Derrat, and I'm joined as always by Sybsidian of the Triple S League. We got a lot of gaming news to get through today, and we'd be remiss if we didn't start off with this one. Syb, two of my top 5 most anticipated games came out last Friday. One was Dragon's Dogma 2, and the other was Rise of the Ronin. And we're going to talk about both of them. A general summary, though, is that neither released in the most ideal of ways. I haven't played Dragon's Dogma 2 yet. I really do, believe me, I really do want to. It's just a matter of timing. But I have played Rise of the Ronin because it's co-op and my wife and I played it together. But we're going to save Rise of the Ronin for a little bit later. We're going to start with Dragon's Dogma 2. And I'm going to hand this over to Saib because he's been keeping up with this a little bit more than I have. I think he did a video dedicated strictly like on its own for the Triple S League. Why don't you bring people up to speed for anybody who has been living under a rock? What the hell's been going on with Dragon's Dogma 2?
So it released in a bizarre state, and there has been so much drama around this. So it the day it came out, it was mostly negative almost immediately because there were a couple of big issues with the game. The first was the like the smoothness of it. Unless you had a beast of a machine, the performance was just terrible.
Yeah,
like just terrible. And I tried, so I booted it up, and I right away could tell I can't do this. I do have a better graphics card waiting, but I need to increase my power supply before I do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so right away, this is one of these games that I could not play on release because it just would be, like going to your Aunt Matilda's to look at her slideshow of her trip to Europe 43 years ago. And it would just be like click, click, cut, click, cut, click. And there's been lots and lots and lots of problems with that. Now, there is ways to make it better, and there's already a whole bunch of add-ons, or not add-ons, mods, that have been improving and increasing and fixing the overall game.
Okay.
And just really, 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 it's really looking quite good. Honestly, it is.
Yeah.
And I think if they can spend it'll probably take about I think it's going to take another month for them to really for a combination of the developers and the modders to get that performance up, depending on your rig, right? In all of these cases, some people, they go, I have an older graphics card and it's running fine.
Well, good for you.
Exactly. And then other people are like, I have a brand new one and it runs like dog poo. And then the other person says, no, dude, I have this medium grade thing and it's running fine. And somebody else goes, well, I have a medium rig, exact same specs as you have, and it's running molasses going uphill on a cold day.
And unfortunately, that comes from people that don't really understand how optimization for PCs works when it comes to mainstream games. It's because you have to make the game work on every single possible combination of CPUs and GPUs and whatever the hell to get it to work. And when there's so many different combinations, one mid-range rig is going to work and another one isn't. It just depends on, whether it's AMD, Intel, which ones are intermingling, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. So, yeah.
So, it's not looking great. Mm-hmm. The other thing that happened...
Well, sorry, before we go on to the other thing, can I just ask you, just as somebody who wants to play it eventually, when you were playing the game, I heard it was pretty CPU intensive. It looks GPU intensive, but CPU was what I was sort of mainly concerned with.
I think that's it too for a lot of people.
Yeah, what was the frame rate like for you when you were trying to play it?
Not good. I didn't pull up the counter, but it was like, all right, this is it's just that feeling, that immediate first feeling well, I am not going to be playing this anytime soon.
Right.
that and for me, Baldur's Gate was kind of like that a little bit too. Is like if I wanted to play on like nicer graphics, it's like it's fine because it's turn-based game, but this is not turn-based. This is a you got to be reacting to some of these like dodges and dashes and rolls and stuff like that, and not that it's like horrible. And this is so weird. Like I played Grand Blue Fantasy Relink,
Mm-hmm.
and that game runs like butter.
Yeah.
Just smooth, hot, melty butter over popcorn so fast. It's amazing. But for some reason, just not this game, not on my system.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I sort of put that down to the fact that, like a lot of people are saying, it's Capcom's first attempt at an open world game with their proprietary engine. And this is sort of them trying to work out the bugs. Hopefully, if the rumors are true, they'll work this out for Resident Evil 9, which is rumored to be an open world game. But yeah, I'm probably going to have to wait another month until they iron out all these problems, and then I'm probably going to go check it out. And that'll probably be the case no matter what, because like I said, I'm just too busy. But yes, the other thing, the thing that most people were talking about instead of the performance issues, what was that, Side?
Microtransactions. And this is where a whole bunch of drama has come from. So a bunch of streamers said, oh yeah, this game looks great, blah, 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 blah. Very few people mentioned anything of the sort when it came to monetization, like microtransactions. And then when the game dropped, so you could download a demo of the game, essentially, not a full demo, but they had a character creator demo,
right?
And you could see all the things in the shop store, and there was nothing there about microtransactions. The day it dropped, Steam page changed and added a whole bunch of infinitely purchasable microtransactions.
There's a lot of them.
Now, there's a couple things with this. First of all, people were furious.
Yeah.
Angry to all hell. There were a lot of people who were just furious that this would happen. But there's a couple not alone that Capcom would do this, which is like kind of expected at this point, but that on top of that, there was a ton of people, a ton of streamers and reviewers and those kinds of people who hadn't said that this was a thing. They hadn't seen it, or they hadn't said that they hadn't seen it, or whatever. And then there were other people who came out and said, oh no, these people are lying because they knew it. They signed a contract, and in the contract it said that it was there. Now, I want to say this. For anybody who's ever seen one of these contracts, it's like 40-some pages long on a short one. And sometimes that stuff is hidden in a see this section and then open this link to see this other thing that'll show you another link that'll show you this. And not that it wasn't that complicated, but it was not straightforward. You had to look like for a while before you saw that. And again, some people say they didn't because they don't stream that. Like, who does? It's like, do you remember? Can you recall what was on page 239 of the last terms of service thing that you agreed to?
Yeah. Because
I guarantee you that you don't. And so that's kind of the thing where it's like, this isn't good. Obviously it's bad. Obviously people hated it. Obviously Capcom kind of hated it too. And I want to say this. The actual microtransactions are effectively useless.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the other thing that I think people need to understand, is that these things are effectively useless. And if you're on PC, they're doubly useless, because on the PC, all of the stuff that you can get has already been modded in for free by the modders.
Right. Yes.
Because it's a single player game that doesn't require server authentication.
Right.
So this is just, it is shocking to me. It really is. And I'm kind of like, ooh, I am very weirded out by the choices that have been made here, the decisions that have been made here, and then why people are doing this kind of stuff, why this is going this way. It doesn't make any sense to me. And then we see this where it's like, oh yeah, they're not even really useful. But I do have a theory, and I'll finish off with this.
Yep.
My theory is that the developers intentionally made these things bad so that they could stop sinking time and energy into them. Asmongold and a lot of other big streamers, like Bellular, they point out the obvious. When you have a microtransaction that you have added into the game at any point for any reason that is a convenience buff, you are designing the game to have things that are inconvenient that you want to use that on.
Right. But that's not
Which
Dragon's
means-
Dogma 2, apparently.
Yeah, which means that there's, and I will say the travel in Dragon's Dogma 2 is donkey bones as far as what I've read from everybody.
Yeah.
But if you just mod the game or have, go out of the way to get these items, it's not nearly as bad. But that's the problem, is because it is a little, it's not focused around gameplay. It's focused around irritating you so that you're tempted to buy more stuff from the store. And when you do that, and I think the devs know this, when you do that, you make the game look like shit. And that's not good.
So in regards to the fast travel thing, there are a lot of people that, like, I share your opinion side, but there are a lot of people that disagree with us, but I don't care. I understand the sentiment. It's like, well, if you're open world, people are wanting to fast travel in your open world, that means that your open world isn't interesting enough. Yeah, maybe that's true, but I also want to have the option. And I did not like it in the original Dragon's Dogma. I don't like the fact that it's in Dragon's Dogma 2. However, from what I understand, the extra microtransactions, they don't really help with anything in regards to the ones that enable, like, help with fast travel, because you could just, within an hour, you'll know where to be able to get the items to do the fast travel, and then you'll be able to go around. And even then, like, even if you can't fast travel as much as you want right away, I mean, you're still at that point in the game where you're still looking around and trying to figure out where everything is, so you're not going to be fast traveling as much. I have a different theory to you, Syb, in regards to why they have these microtransactions, even though I think that yours is plausible. I think the reason why it's included is because they want people to think that, before they start playing, that they will require these things, and they just want it to be as easy as they can off the bat, just so they can make it easier for themselves. And before even playing a minute of it, they'll just spend an extra $5. They're just counting on the people that don't really know much about Capcom games or aren't in the know and don't realize that you can get this stuff early on to spend that extra money, little bit of money. Same thing happened with Resident Evil, from what I understand. Like, I played that game, and a lot of hardcore fans played that game knowing, well, I'm going to be able to get through this no problem without buying any of the microtransactions. And we did. But I'm sure that there were people that played it and it's like, oh, I want to have that extra advantage because it'll probably add to my fun. So, yeah, I don't like that. I don't think that. Yeah, the microtransaction issue. Obviously, I think it's
not good.
It's not good, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't ever be a part of any single player game. It should only be a part of single player games at all, if, at the very least, if it's just for aesthetics, which I don't really have that much of a problem with. But anything else, anything that makes the game easier or not, I don't want it in there. And I wish that the discourse surrounding Dragon's Dogma 2 was a little bit more accurate when it comes to the microtransaction stuff, so that way the criticism can't be just passed off by, I don't know, higher-ups at Capcom saying, oh, they don't even know what they're talking about. Yes, criticize the microtransactions, but just make sure that you know what you're criticizing them for. And I think in this case, what you should be criticizing them for is saying that, well, you're sort of leeching off of the ignorance of the average player to maybe spend an extra few bucks, even though the game really, really doesn't need it. So just be accurate with your hatred, I suppose, in regards to all this. I got to mute for a second. Syb, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, so like the game's general combat, like everything about it is really good.
Yeah, everything I've been hearing, it sounds amazing.
Reviewing really well as far as like the actual like experience of it. Asmongold rated it 9.4. Now he was getting paid by them, so some people will immediately say, "Oh, favoritism, sponsor deal," like all that kind of stuff. But really, when I look at it, it's like the core concepts of the game are really good. Like I could tell right away after this game gets a bunch of mods and the performance is improved, I can see this being like a long-term game.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Because it does look really good. It does fight really nicely. But the two biggest problems of the game were the
Fast
performance
travel.
issues, right from day one. Didn't take advantage of DLLS at all. Sorry, DSLL at all. And then there
DLSS.
was DLSS. Ah, darn it. The other one is a super secret program that nobody knows about.
Yeah, why are you telling? Okay, keep it on the DL. Keep going.
So just ultimately, I'd say that they really screwed this up because they could have had an absolute stormer of a game, and they don't because of what I can only postulate is upper CEO level, like, make sure you include a bunch of microtransactions, because that's what they were told to do by some dumb analyst somewhere.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much what I figure. Maybe a bright side of all this is that whatever Capcom's next game is going to be, whether it's the next Monster Hunter, which I don't think it will be, probably the next Resident Evil, that they'll think twice about adding this sort of crap in the future if they want to avoid this headache. Anyways, let's move on from that. And sorry, like I'm starting to come down with something which is really upsetting. But anyways, moving on to Rise of the Ronin, as I promised. I've been particularly looking to this game, mainly just because it's Team Ninja side. I love Team Ninja. I love the Neo games. I love Wo Long. I don't go as far back with them as a lot of people do. I think they did the original Ninja Gaidens and stuff like that, if I recall correctly. I'll double check that. But I love their more recent work. They provided, with Neo and Wo Long, these wonderful alternatives to sort of the Souls type combat. Because what's so interesting about the combat from the Team Ninja games is that there's just enough of a difference in the way that they approach the Souls formula that every once in a while you'll want to put down an amazing game like Dark Souls or Bloodborne or Elden Ring and go play one of their games because it offers a different kind of challenge. They're like, with Neo, it's you have to press a button in order to make your stamina go back up a little bit faster. Or with Wo Long, it's gosh, I played that game so much I can't remember exactly what the element was. It was a greater emphasis on the parrying, if I recall correctly. But it was it felt smoother and a lot more fun to play, at least for me, than it did when it came to Sekiro, and it was just ridiculous. But that's a subjective thing. Anyways, because I love their work so much, naturally I was looking forward to Rise of the Ronin. It was another Japanese setting like it was in Neo, and it was open world. And how often have people been looking for an open world Japanese setting, aside from Ghost of Tsushima, which is great, but people have been asking for like a Japanese Assassin's Creed for years. I even as much as the Assassin's Creed franchise has sort of divided people as of late, even the mere idea sounds kind of cool. And if Team Ninja is going to be behind such an idea, naturally I'm going to be excited. And so I've been excited for the game for the last couple of years. And the stuff that I've seen coming out of it has been looking pretty encouraging. I like the idea of mid-1800s Japan, when the West and the East were just beginning to intermingle. And the idea of being able to mix up the combat by not just using swords and stuff like that, but being able to use guns and cannons and all that sort of stuff. So I was going into Rise of the Ronin with pretty decently high expectations. Not sky-high expectations, because I don't think any Team Ninja game is anything like AAA. It's solidly AA. So even though I really like them, I sort of try to keep my expectations from going too high. Well, I played the game. I played about 20 hours of it so far. And it's fine. It's mostly... It's not spectacular. It's not great. Honestly, I'm a little bit disappointed with it. There was an article that I saw just randomly come across my feed. It feels like an open world game that released 10 years ago. That's kind of what it feels like to me. And that's not to say that there aren't great open world games that released 10 years ago. But given that it's a decade later, you do want to see a little bit more innovation, stuff to make it stand out. And there isn't that Team Ninja flavor a whole lot here that really makes me want to play this game more than, just going back and playing through Ghost of Tsushima a second time, which I think is a far superior game to this. But let's start with the positives, and then I'll go into greater detail with my negatives. As I sort of just mentioned, the setting of mid-1800s Japan is really, really cool. The world looks cool from an art direction perspective, not so much from graphics, but I'll get to that in a second. But like the just feudal Japan, it looks like I feel immersed in that world. It feels like I'm there. It feels accurate to what it was in real life, and at least the entire time that I've been playing, I enjoyed that element of it quite a bit. Great music. I really like the battle themes and the ambience and stuff like that. And they also have a couple of things that I think should be in every game. One, Saib, I think every gamer can agree that anytime you add a grappling hook to any action game, it instantly gets a point or two in its favor. And this game has a grappling hook, and it allows you to go up on top of buildings, and easily reminded me of Tenchu Stealth Assassins for PS1. Hell yes! And I got to relive my childhood playing that game by being able to be a ninja and grappling onto the top of buildings. That was a lot of fun. Plus, one thing that I hope Ghost of Tsushima 2 has in some capacity is what this game has, which is a glider mechanic. Totally historically inaccurate, but it's a lot of fun to use. Anytime you do a double...
What are you talking about? I distinctly remember seeing many Leonardo da Vinci glider drawings.
Yeah.
I'm sure that somebody could have done something similar in the past.
Yes, and how many of those are, like, whenever you run into a building, how long do you think those people stayed afloat? Probably not for the next 5 seconds like you're able to in this game. You probably have a half-snapped neck that you'll never be able to heal.
This is probably true, I suppose.
Yes, but just don't think about that. The inclusion of it in this game is awesome. It makes traversal a lot more fun. And I really hope that any sort of game that takes place in this sort of time period or in this type of setting includes that in the future, because it's a lot of fun and a great addition. Now, that is really sort of the end of my pros. As for cons, combat. The key selling feature of what makes me love Team Ninja games and what makes a lot of people love their games is the combat. And it's a pretty decent step down here. Now, I understand why. It's because they wanted this game to appeal to a more mainstream audience. And let's be honest, Neo and Wolong aren't games that are for everybody. They're very difficult. They're very niche. So I understand why they did what they did here. And I also got to be honest, what they decided to do with the combat is a little bit of a me problem. Because with Neo and Wolong, if you know what you're doing, you can keep the combat feeling quite kinetic and quite engaging by, properly using the dodge and parrying buttons. But with Rise of the Ronin, what I found myself doing a lot of the times is just blocking and being patient. And people are like, what do you mean? Like, that you sort of do that with Neo and Wolong anyways. Well, it feels like it takes a lot longer. It feels a lot slower when you're doing it in Rise of the Ronin. And they're doing that in order to make it more accessible for people, and also feel unique and all that, and also trying to make it feel mainstream. But it's a balance that I don't think really works that well. So it's sort of its problem, but it's also a bit of a me problem. Overall, it's kind of a step down for me. Moving on. What else do I have to say here? The graphics. Oh my God, Saib. Okay. Most of the time, you and I, we don't really care about graphics, right? And generally, the same sort of thing applies here. But I gotta say, there are a number of instances where the lack of graphical fidelity is quite noticeable. The poppin' is some of the worst poppin' that I've seen in a mainstream game in many, many years. Like, you could be like 5 meters away from something and you could see a yellow bush pop out amidst a large span of grass, or a whole bunch of yellow bushes amongst a huge field of grass. It's really, really noticeable. Really bad shadow effects, really bad lighting effects. It looks ugly at a couple of points. let's see what else we got here. Open world activities generally fine, but they're kind of stock when it comes to the open world type of formula. Like you can, like how often have you heard this? You go to this one particular location in an open world game, and it shows different markers they can go to, and then most of the time those markers involve you just taking out a bunch of enemies, and then maybe there's a treasure chest, and that's really it. And maybe visiting one or two other locations just so you can be a completionist. There's not really a whole lot of innovation there, not like it was for something like Ghost of Tsushima. And it's like they kind of need to be there. I understand those types of objectives, but I wish that there was a little bit more variety there. Now they do have like some stuff that you could do with the glider, which is cool, but that's about it. I was just wishing that there'd be a little bit more there. And the loot, this will be the last thing. Everybody knows that the loot in Team Ninja games is ridiculous. There's a lot of it. And I don't know. They've improved upon it a little bit. There isn't as much nowadays, but it's still a lot of it, and there's not really anything that really makes any particular item feel special, you know? So, yeah, it's on the whole, I'd say that if you really, really like that particular era of history and you like the idea of an open world game with a Japanese setting and being able to go around and be a Ronin, I think there is some fun to be had here. But I do not think that it is worth its current asking price at all. I would definitely say wait for a sale. I personally would say wait until it's about 50% off, which I don't imagine will take that long. In the meantime, if you're going to pick between Dragon's Dogma 2 or Rise of the Ronin, I would easily suggest Dragon's Dogma 2. Anyways, those are my impressions. Syb, well, I don't know. Is Rise of the Ronin available outside of the PS5? I'm not sure. Do you have any interest in playing it?
I don't actually know.
That's a good question. I'm surprised I don't know.
You know, it's weird because as much as I love like a lot of like Japanese focused games, the Ronin series never really caused me to go, oh, that looks really interesting. I might go for that. And I don't even know why. Can't even tell you, honestly.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, it just came out on the PS5. Yeah, so those are my impressions, ladies and gentlemen. And we've finally talked about Dragon's Dogma 2 and Rise of the Ronin. Do you have any thoughts on either of these games? Are you playing both of them? Are you playing just one of them? Whatever your thoughts are, we want to hear from you in the comment section below. All right, let's keep plowing. Syb, I'm going to throw it over to you. What's going on with NVIDIA?
So NVIDIA had a big showcase last week, and it was very technical. I only watched a few hours of the many-hour presentation and following like interviews and things like that came out about it. And I'm just going to give you the skinny. Basically, way back when in 2000 and I think it was 16, we had a GPU. I might be thinking 2008. But I'm pretty sure it's 2016. We had a GPU come out that had 8 billion transistors in it. 8 billion transistors on it. That was pretty amazing for the time. One of the reasons why I remember that number is it was because it had more transistors on this card than there were human beings on the planet. Now, if you go back in time, the ramp up had been quite slow to get to that part. There was just not as many. There wasn't as many people, doing that kind of cards with that much ramping up to that high a number. It was ramping up to it, but it was ramping up to it very slowly over the course of several decades. Now, do you know how many transistors are in their newest card that they just dropped, their newest major chip that they just dropped?
Well, I do, because you put it in the Discord chat. So
I did. And it's an amazing, shockingly massive number of 208 billion. So that is an increase that has gone on. Like that is an absolute, like, I don't know how to quantify this. This is a larger increase than any other jump in recent memory of technology. Like this is just absolutely massive when it comes to like the speed and growth at which they've been growing at. And the speed at which this has come in is honestly quite amazing. It's shocking because the like it's unprecedented, because if I were to draw this on a scale, it's not like the rate at which computers gained every year. They were doubling themselves since the 80s. It's not even like that rush that we had between the 486 and the first couple of Pentium versions that came out. That was a huge rush where gaming was just taking, or like hardware, not gaming. Hardware, well, gaming at the same time, but hardware was taking these gigantic leaps and bounds and stuff like that over and over and over again. And that is cool and amazing in a lot of ways. But this growth from Nvidia is beyond any of that we've seen for a very, very, very long time, and outranks the amount of growth that they're having there. So everybody knows about like Boston Dynamics and how they're building robots and stuff like
Yeah.
that. You know what Nvidia did? Nvidia, a graphical card company. Nvidia looked at the training mechanisms that computers were learning to learn how to navigate real world terrain.
Mhm.
And how they do that is they take the terrain, they scan the terrain, they create a 3D representation of that within the computer, and then the computer is registering feedback off of that virtual display. NVIDIA said, why don't we just skip that process and skip immediately to just training them in that three-dimensional realm? Because technically, why make a robot in the physical world run 10 laps around an obstacle course to learn data when you could make them run a billion laps around a billion courses in the fraction of the same time?
Right.
And a lot of people go, well, wait a second, is that going to even work? Like, you're supposed to be learning real world tech, but because of the way they have it set up, it appears to be working extremely well.
Well, it depends on the type of AI that you want to try and create, right? There's a difference between
A little
learning while you're
bit.
in a body than you are in a virtual state where it's kind of purely mental, you know?
As far as I understand now, they have been able to shortcut that to the point where they can literally just create a world that's real enough that they can do that.
Oh, cool.
So, and now again, I'm not an expert on this, and I would urge caution for people trying to figure out exactly how that functions. But yeah, it does appear to have this significant increase in the amount of time that it's learning how to circumvent and navigate objects and stuff like that, because the process is the same when you've scanned so they scan a location, then they put that info into themselves, and then they learn how to navigate around that world with that data. Basically, they're still scanning those real worlds, and then they're duplicating them in and then changing them inside an artificial world, and the computers are still learning just as fast. So again, I don't know exactly how, like, if this is going to be the new way to do it, or if this is going to be a better way to do it, or if this is just an additional way that they can do it, and it seems to be working out. If that's the case, then that's pretty darn cool. Like on a very, very big scale of, like, that's amazing.
Hmm.
But there was one more thing amongst a handful of other things that were amazing, but I'm not going to talk about. The one more amazing thing that I was shocked with, absolutely so, is that they took their server farm status for crunching um for crunching 1 billion jobs, right? So you get a task, whether it's doing emails or doing whatever. You have this power price that's attached to doing 1 billion jobs.
Hmm.
Their new servers have cut down the power requirement for doing these jobs, the same number of jobs in the same amount of time. They've cut the power demands by 75%.
Oh
Now
my
that
god.
that is huge for anybody who knows anything about server farms and how much of a power hog these things are, and how much, like, how much energy goes into maintaining that kind of stuff. It is absolutely shocking to me that they have managed to do this with no repercussions as far as quality. And what a lot of this was the distance in which information traveled. That was legitimately the actual biggest thing here, is that the distance of the sending those bits from one core processor to another to roll that data and then send that data out. They basically took that distance and they shortened it by like 75 to 80%,
Wow.
which ended up with far more efficient machines, because it wasn't so much the processing power. And this, you can get really, really sciencey with this stuff, and I don't want to, because it would take an extra like 20 minutes. But I'm not saying that they've learned how to make the computer answer or do a query or do a problem solving thing in shorter amount of time. It's not that they've done that. It's that they've created shortcuts to the way that information was getting passed around, and making it far more efficient, which then made the computers 75% less energy draw, which is huge. So NVIDIA was a company that made graphics cards, and they are now making significant leaps and jumps in both AI and server farm technology. That to me is absolutely shocking, amazing, and probably one of the more important scientific upgrades of the last, like, probably 10 years.
Yeah, makes me wonder what the heck AMD has got going on over at their, sort of what their response to that is.
I, and I don't think AMD is going to be able to challenge this, because what I think has gone on, and what some people haven't realized, is that AMD is um they're not in the same like category of like pushing tech, science, that kind of stuff
Mm-hmm.
as Nvidia is. Nvidia is really pushing this kind of stuff, and that's going to allow them to create more of their baseline products for like graphics cards much better, because now they have a much bigger hold on the market. So I hope that other companies, not just AMD, but a whole bunch of other companies, learn how to look at this, focus on it, and say, yeah, we can actually do all of this stuff, and learn how to do all of this stuff, as good or better, however. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. Is I'm hoping that this can be an example for a lot of other companies, so that they are increasing their overall quality and what they can do by multitasking into things that make natural sense for them to multitask into. The leader of Nvidia said that it was amazing that a few years ago all they made were graphics cards, but now they're doing things for Bitcoin, they're doing servers for data farming, they're doing all this other stuff, because it was a natural evolution from what they were doing beforehand, moving into this, and that's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can't wait to see how they're going to implement this type of technology into their new graphics cards. I've had my 2080 Ti for a decent amount of time, and it's served me quite well. And I don't plan on switching for the next 2 or 3 years. But man, can you imagine what the 50 series? Well, probably not the 50 series. I don't know if they're going to be able to implement this into there, but eventually, and I'm going to want some of that, because I could certainly cut down on some of the power usage that my system has been using. Thank you, NVIDIA. You guys rock. All right. Moving on to... Oh, God. Do we have to talk about this?
Again,
Again.
this is going to be a shorter update for this.
Okay.
Mostly because I'm horrified by this, and I think that people need to understand that the language is really important. Um, I've talked for a long time about how I get more than most people. I really do understand the need for more diversity in gaming. It's like one of the reasons why I don't play some games is because protagonist looks like every other protagonist I've ever seen,
Mm.
and it's really boring.
Yeah.
I don't like playing boring things. I like playing something that over and over and over again. I have one type of character that I play a lot, but that's not the point of having a big variety when it comes to gaming, when it comes to accessibility, when it comes to all this other kind of stuff. So there's a good argument to be made for increasing that. But my stance has always been increase it for everyone, give everybody more options, and thus you will create a larger expanse to availability for people in games and all this kind of stuff, because that's actually like really, 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 really important that you get that kind of experience in, and you jump that kind of like accessibility for people, because that does make sense. Now, it doesn't make sense to alienate and to ignore the things that you could be doing with set audiences. I think it's incredibly stupid to have somebody think that, oh well, they're just going to erase a certain people group from their what they want people to play, because they just don't need to. And that's kind of this big issue and fault that causes a lot of harm and causes a lot of problems, and it's not going to help the overall community of gamers if they're doing that. But things went from bad to worse in this whole SBI fiasco of like drama now, because right now, and I am quoting here, somebody wanted a final purge of gamers so that they could finally have the types of games that they want to have.
Until you could say that maybe all the gamers are dead.
I, Obviously they didn't. I don't think, I don't know what's in their heart, but I don't think they meant it that way. But I think 100% that somebody listening to that person talk and believing everything they say would definitely take that to mean, hey, let's just do this. It's a stoking of hate that is done so primarily to make money. Like all of these people who are involved in this, a lot of people who are involved in this, not everybody, but a lot of people who are involved in this, they're involved with this because they're making money off of it. I would say that we're not really in that category, because we don't make a ton of money off of this. Also, if we did, I would be making drama videos every day going, in the next 10,000th update from so and so, random Twitter poster said this, and there are people who do that. All I'm asking for is for people to understand the other side and make decisions that make sense for everybody, not just the individuals. But this kind of like hate them because they're an enemy, this extreme sense of like us versus them, is extremely unhealthy, and this will devolve into worse and worse things, because nobody could have imagined that a statement like a final purge. Nobody would have thought that anybody would use language like that even like a year ago. And now they're saying, no, we want to purge these people. And especially in social context right now, you watch the Purge movies, you know what that word means. It doesn't mean flushing the pipes anymore. It means gathering up a bunch of people who you don't like and exterminating them for the purity of your social ideals. And it's like, the minute that we get to that point, we've got to press the brakes on this stuff and say, you have got to stop this, because this doesn't go, just like censorship, this never ever goes the way that you think it's going to go. It always goes in a different direction that you didn't anticipate, and causes a lot of harm to people that you did not think that it would affect. And so I will say 100%, this kind of rhetoric is absolutely evil, and it needs to stop. But it won't stop, because there's people involved in this where they make their money by stoking up the insanity, because they've been told for the longest time that there's no such thing as bad press. Like their own, that they, if they, whatever they make, the more insane that it is, the more unstable it is, then the better it'll do.
Yeah, that's the toxic mindset that tends to propel a lot of media, especially in the modern era, where it's all about hate clicks. Yep. And hopefully it's just that type of disingenuousness that is behind this, and not an actual feeling of malcontent, which I don't think it is, especially for the woman that apparently said it. Her name is Jewel Hardy. She apparently works at the BBC as a presenter and a host. Yeah, I don't think so.
Like absolutely, it's unacceptable.
Agree. Yeah.
And it's never going to go the way that if you think, oh well, we just need to get rid of them. It's like, trust me, that's not going to go the way that you want. It's really not. We don't like. There is room for other games, and there is this idea of encouraging people to try new things. Those are all good things. Those aren't bad things. And like I said, when this whole thing started, there's a lot of nuance here. And what we're asking for the normal average gamer, I 100% believe this. The normal average gamer is asking for people to be generally respectful of IP, artists, content, ideas, and avoid things like censorship and hate mongering on any side because it's not going to be helpful. The people who are against SBI on the Twitter group, they're not doing that because they hate these people. They're doing this because they don't feel that the games are being served and they're not getting a good experience. That's what their complaint is. And for a lot of people, that is a 100% accurate complaint because games have been kind of really bad over the last decade. And no, we don't have an easy answer as to why. But the next story will answer some of that, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's move on to better news and more positive news. So, Epic, people behind Unreal, the wonderful Unreal Engine, held their State of Unreal event this past week and did a whole bunch of stuff. But the thing that really caught a lot of people's eyes was this new project that we've been in the know about for the past year. It's called Marvel 1943, Rise of Hydra. And it's particularly been on my radar because of the woman that is one of the leads on the project, that being Amy Hennig, who, for my money, is probably one of the best writers in the history of the video gaming medium. She is responsible, probably most famously, for Uncharted. But in my heart, she's the greatest for the work that she did on Legacy of Kain, which, to this day, I don't think there's ever been any game released since the Legacy of Kain that has had better dialogue in a video game. It's the equivalent of Shakespeare, as far as I'm concerned. Unfortunately, because of the way that the industry works and the way that it sort of responds to the artists that are trying to make it better and make it move forward, she hasn't really had as much work in the last little while. What was the Star Wars project that she was working on?
I think it was unannounced as far as like the actual name of it. She was involved in it was supposedly like some form of like thing with Han Solo, I think. I'm recalling this off the top of my head. I could very much be wrong. But yeah, it was supposed to be this like cool story about a narrative following several characters. And then it just got kind of shut down randomly.
Yeah. It's a shame because everything this woman has touched has just been fantastic as far as I'm concerned. But thankfully, she finally got her new start at Skydance Media, and she's working on this game. Now, at this event, what the whole point of the event really was just to show the graphical capability of Marvel 1943 using the Unreal Engine behind it. We obviously, at the moment, don't really know much about what type of game it's going to be. All we know is that we're going to be able to control 4 characters, and 2 of them include, obviously, Steve Rogers, Captain America, and another one is Black Panther, although it's not the T'Challa Black Panther, it's like T'Challa's grandfather. But still, generally, really, really interesting idea, and it's going to take place in 1943 Nazi-occupied Paris. Very, very unique very unique scenario and setting for a superhero game. I wonder if it's going to sort of make Blade, when it comes out in a few years, feel a little bit devalued because it's also taking place in Paris, but whatever. Probably not. Anyways, we saw a story trailer for Marvel 1943 using the Unreal Engine tech. Syb, the facial animation in this story trailer is lifelike. It's
Yeah.
I mean, everything else looks great. Typically what you tend to expect from Unreal Engine, but this is the next step. I have never seen facial animations look this good in a game, ever. The closest probably might be The Last of Us Part 2. But somehow it looks like 50% better than that. There were a couple times where I was just focusing on the guy who plays Black Panther's face, and I wasn't looking at anything else on the screen. And for a full second, I thought that I was watching something live action transplanted onto something CGI. That's how good it looks. And thankfully, during the scene that we got to see a lot of Black Panther's face, it was when Captain America and him are on a bridge and sort of throwing jabs at each other. The acting and the line delivery was very, very well written. So it looks like we're in for something quite special. Now, obviously, the most important thing for any game is gameplay. And like I said, we still don't know much about it. But what we've seen so far is pretty impressive. So yeah, Saib, your thoughts?
I think this like hyper realism stuff, this is what I think gaming has been trying to get to, often at the expense of what I think a lot of people think is like better gameplay.
Yeah.
But now that we're finally here, I hope we can focus on gameplay.
Yeah.
Which this does look like decent, and I'm in agreement. Amy has always been one of my favorite writers. I think that she's responsible for so much and has done such a good job and really understands game writing, because game writing is really important. The worst thing that she's done is had deaths in quick scenes, not quick quick time, it's not quick time events. Well, there's the quick time events, but then there's like the when characters die, but they die outside of like your ability to control or do anything about it. It's like that, where it's like, oh yeah, I totally just, on the hard mode difficulty, I stomp this boss and then he flicks me aside with one hand and then kills the other character. It's like, no, this is unacceptable. This is not how the fight was going. I was doing perfectly. That kind of stuff is like, that's the worst thing, but it's also kind of silly because like, that's just part of the experience of the game, right? So yeah, that's the worst thing. And when it comes to game writers, I can think of 1,000 other people who are 1,000 times worse in every possible regard when it comes to writing. So yeah, I think Amy is absolutely masterful, and I think that she's done a great job, and I think that she's unfortunately been not been able to get as much recognition for that, and I hope that changes with this game. I hope that it's a masterpiece and that people love it.
Yeah, it's a good time to be a Marvel fan, at least as far as games go. Maybe not so much in terms of movies. I hopefully we'll get this game next year, because it seems like they're coming along quite well. All right, and then finally, speaking of future games, there was a future game show, and you wanted to highlight some stuff from that this past week.
There was, and I will say that the future game show, the biggest winners for this showcase was occultism and indie developers.
Sweet.
We all know how much we love everybody loves a good Cthulhu worshipping session, right? Mm-hmm. This is quite normal for normal people.
Every once in a while, you just got to sacrifice a goat on the altar of Baal. That's just how it goes.
Man. So there's this game called Worshippers of Cthulhu. It's like Frostpunk meets Civ meets Cult of the Lamb. It's brilliant. It looks absolutely brilliant.
It's called, really, I gotta see what the hell this is. Worshippers of Cthulhu?
Worshippers of Cthulhu.
Okay, I gotta look
You build a civilization around worshipping an old god who randomly eats the entire civilization. Oh, is it so good? I saw this and I was like, wow, this looks absolutely amazing. Um, for those of you who don't know, I really like big 4X like turn-based games. Like Mooney really likes like Frostpunk type stuff. I like the more grand like world-spanning ones, but she loves the city sim kind of like
Hmm.
things. Yeah, she's played enormous amount of Frostpunk, which is the second game of that coming out soon. But yeah, Worshippers of Cthulhu look amazing. We got a little bit more on No Rest for the Wicked, which also looks amazing. Also, kind of that dark occulty kind of vibe to it, at least visually. We've got Awaken Astral Blade, another really good game, and all these games, there's a common running theme with them, and that is that most of these studios making these games are all indie studios.
Mm.
And this is why I wanted to mention this in light of a lot of the other issues that we've had with in gaming over the last little while. It 100%, 100%. I think that when we look at the mistakes, there's been a big expose that's being written up about Blizzard and the transition from the Kotick era to the current era of like what's going on. And hands down, what is going on is a complete and total failure of these CEOs who do not understand the market, the industry that they're in. I think it was Bellular or somebody said that recently. Oh no, it was Sven. It was Sven
Yeah.
from Larian Studios and a couple other people basically came out and said the same thing. That you have CEOs and their stupid analysts who overhire for a company. They buy a company out, they overhire, then after 2 years of there not being record profits because they're 2 years into a 5-year game development cycle, they go fire a bunch of people, and then you lose the ingrown experience at that studio. You lose that, and then you struggle to catch up with having made that loss. You finally get up to where you are and you release a bad product because you've been stressed the whole time trying to get it out, and then you rinse and repeat the same process of firing the people who know what they're doing, firing the core concept, overreaching to an audience. There's this idea in big professional gaming right now, which is that you have to cater to absolutely everybody. You need to cater to every single person on the planet. So you have to have the most dumbest, the most basic tutorial that lasts 3 hours teaching a person who you assume to have an IQ of 40 how to play your game, and then catering to that level of skill challenge. Because, I mean, hey, there's a bunch of people that have a 40 level IQ. I mean, it's not a lot of them, and most of them are, not capable of even playing a game, let alone doing anything else. But yeah, that's their mentality. You have to cater to those people, because if you don't, then you have this wide group of people that you're missing. And it's simply not true. And indie games prove this. Indie games prove this beyond a shadow of a doubt, that when you cater to good, finite, niche gameplay and you make your game good enough, you will have tremendous success in that field,
Mhm.
because people are interested in that kind of a thing. And that's why it's also at the same time is, in regards to the SBI thing, is like, it's like, these are the people who are encouraging that sense of like, oh no, you have to cater to everybody. You can't have somebody um, who's not, absolutely, you know you can't have a story that's geared towards a particular type of person that's not everybody on our list of who they think you need to cater to. It's like that's a problem for game development. And what you should do is you should prove and also focus on making the best product that you can to cater to that audience, so that you can show and get that audience actually engaged. When you try to take over all gaming and trying to create something, whether it's for reasons of SBI or reasons for infinite stockholder gain, it's like you're going to run into a wall on either one of those things. What you need to do is focus on the things that your niche game can do, because all games are niche. You don't have a city sim, a constructor, a star exploration thing and a novel style RPG at the same time as having an action RPG. You just don't get all of those things at once.
Right.
It doesn't work. So stop trying to force that, because that's not going to help the thing. There's a bunch of train games. Train games are another thing that I've seen, starting to crop up more and more often. But a train game is only really interested in people who like that style of thing, or people who like trains. You're not going to get somebody who's an avid player of RPGs and Baldur's Gate kind of like deep RPGs. You're not going to get them to play a game where you set up a train track for 2.5 hours, then sit back and watch the train. Like sure, there's some overlap there, but you can't overlap everything. So instead of understanding that this is a Venn diagram of differing niches and concepts, and that you can't have everything that's just the one game that everybody plays, and indeed we only ever see that when it comes to certain hyper studios, like Skyrim, Skyrim type thing, where it's like you have a lot of variety in that, of what you can do in that play style. But even then, you still have this run where it's a lot more, it's just a lot of combat focused stuff. And Starfield tried to incorporate more of that kind of stuff. There was this idea that you could be this permanent trader going from planet to planet to planet, just buying and selling commodities and becoming super rich. But even that kind of failed out because it didn't cross over the boundaries of other genres enough, or as interestingly as they could, to actually create the type of thing that everybody wanted to have. So that's why, looking at this, and I see nothing but indie studios behind almost all of these projects, and a lot of them look really good. I mean, sure, a lot of these companies a lot of these games aren't going to sell 5 million copies, but collectively, I think a lot of these games collectively will. And that's the kind of success that's going to feed smaller indie studio creators who, just like the news, just like the people reporting on the SBI thing in the gaming space, as far as the game journalists go, where Kotaku is falling apart, it's basically looks like they're trying to force it to be shuttered and force everybody to quit.
Right.
I think looking at that, you can say why, and it's like, well, because these smaller YouTubers can do better content quicker, faster, and hit a larger group of niche audiences all at the same time. It's the exact same thing for these gaming studios. It's the exact same thing. The gaming studios, indie developers making niche games, are being able to hit more people than these big, gigantic game companies that are trying to create a game that caters to absolutely everybody. And it's a quintuple A game that has the most, it has 10 years of game development and $800 million worth of investment to make this thing. It's like, is that really better than having, being able to play a bunch of games that you love to play because they're your perfect niche and you really enjoy that and you're really loving that? And that's where I think now, I think the time of the big boxes are coming to an end, and the big boxes are like big box stores, big box enterprises, big box publishers,
big in general.
Yeah, just in general, it's starting to splinter. Now you do have things like Amazon, which is incorporating that, but you're also incorporating a lot of other people who do a lot of things on the side for that kind of stuff. So yeah. I don't know. I thought that was really interesting, looking at the news, looking at this, seeing all these wonderful games and going, this is really doing something different here. Yeah. And one game that I think you should check out, I can't remember the name of it unless I posted it in here somewhere, but there is a game that is coming out that is built in an 8-bit game engine. So it looks like one of the original games on adventure games on PC. Like it's very blocky. And they mix that with very high quality filmography that they mix into the game. So you open the door in this thing that's got like a total of 100 bits of squares on the screen. You can literally count them in your character. They open a door and that immediately transitions into this 8K horror scene of this creature coming out of the door chasing you, and then it goes back to the game and you're running away from the creature who's in, he's like 10 square blocks of bits. He looks absolutely ridiculous, but the horror of what you just saw, that it's really putting you in. It's a very interesting concept. And it's very, very exciting for, like, again, what we're going to be able to see at some point in the future.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, just further proving what Syb has been saying for the longest time is that indie games are where the future is headed, as long as AAA studios continue to overinflate their budgets and all that. It's exciting. And I looked at the Worshippers of Cthulhu thing, and that thing looks absolutely charming for all the wrong reasons. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude, I did promise that I have a little bit of an announcement. So, starting tomorrow, I'm going to be recording a podcast series on Planescape Torment with the guys over at Resonant Arc, Mike and Kaysen over there. They do, as far as I'm concerned, the best video game analysis on the internet. They do really long form and really in-depth podcasts on a bunch of heavily story-driven games. They invited me to be on there. We're going to be recording tomorrow, which will be Thursday, but it won't release until the middle of next week, I think. So stay tuned for that. I'm very excited. It's sort of been a dream of mine to collaborate with these guys. And go over to their channel. That's Resonant Arc, as in something that resonates, and then Arc, Resonant Arc. Don't miss out on what's going to be an amazing, the most profound crossover in video game analysis history. Let's just call it that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that does it for this episode of Maximum News. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. You know the drill. Syb, thanks as always for joining me. My throat's killing me. Do you have anything you want to plug before we finish?
No, the game that I pulled up it's called Tenebris Sominia. And okay. I think we're going to use this for the thumbnail, so you probably have already seen it. So
Tenebris, what is it again? So what?
I linked it in. I linked it in the Discord.
Oh, okay. Thank
you. Tenebris Somnia.
Oh, in the same vein as survival horror classics like Silent Hill. You're speaking my language. All right.
Yes.
And you guys,
yeah, it's so cool. But yeah, check us out on the Twitter. I'm trying to do more frequent meme updates and stuff like that. So if you like that kind of stuff, head on over.
Mm-hmm. And you guys can find me just all the regular forms of social media, just at Max Derrat. I'll put links to all that stuff in the description box below. Thanks, guys. Until we do this again next week, I want to remind you, as always and as per usual, stay yellow.
Goodbye.